Hey guys, this is Coach Lowe in Contextual Geometry, and we are going to talk about parallelograms today. So this is 8.2 parallelograms. All right, so a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with two pairs of parallel sides. So you put a green set of windows, flaps, in your notebook, and the first one we are going to put on there is parallelograms. And so on that, you need to put on the inside, we drew a picture on the outside, so it should look like this on the outside with the parallelogram. And you can go ahead and mark the sides. This side's parallel to that one's parallel to that one. So parallelogram, two pairs of parallel sides. All right, so on the inside of that flap, we can write several things, several bullet points. And these are actually the theorems that are in this section, but let's go ahead and write them on the green window. So go ahead and open up that window where it says parallelogram. And on the inside, you have two sections. And so let's just make some bullet points here. Opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent, which means they are equal in measure. So opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent to each other. So that means if this is A, B, C, D, that angle A is congruent to angle C, and angle D is congruent to angle B. All right, the next one. Opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So we talked about consecutive sides and opposite sides, and consecutive angles and opposite angles in 8.1. Opposite sides of a parallelogram, there's my abbreviation for parallelogram, are congruent. All right, so opposite sides, AD is congruent to BC, and AB is congruent to DC. So opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. All right, now I just said consecutive sides, so let's go ahead and write this down. Consecutive sides of a parallelogram, I'm sorry, not sides, angles, my bad. I was going to say this is not going to work here. All right, consecutive angles of a parallelogram are supplementary, which means they add to be 180 degrees. All right, so consecutive angles, so that'd be like angle A, angle B, angle C. They are supplementary, add to be 180 degrees. Okay, so that means the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B equals 180 degrees. And you can go ahead and write the other three. B plus C is 180, C plus D is 180, D plus A is 180. So we can travel all the way around that guy and get 180 degrees, two consecutive angles, adding to be 180 degrees. All right, so let's work a couple of examples. If I were you, I would pause the video and I would go ahead and write all of this right after we took notes for 8.1. So I would put this on the flap, but I would also write it in 8.2 notes because I'm going to check your notes. You know that. All right, so I would go ahead and write that there. And so pause the video, write that down, and then come back and we'll work an example. All right, so now that you're back, here's example number 1. Let's go ahead and draw a parallelogram. So that side is 23, this is 105, and this is 15. And let's name this K, L, M, N. And I'm telling you it's a parallelogram, and that KL is 23, KN is 15, and angle K is 105. So could you please find the measure of LM, of NM, of angle M, and of angle L. All right, so you pause the video and go ahead and try those. All right, now that you're back, we know that opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So LM is 15. And if KL is 23, then NM is also 23. We also know opposite angles are congruent. So if K is 105, M is 105. And then for L, we know that consecutive angles are supplementary, which means angle K plus angle L has to be 180. So 105 plus something has to be 180 degrees. So subtract 105. Some of you guys are like, hey, I'll just subtract 105. Absolutely. So 75 degrees. And if they ask me for angle N, I know that it is also 75 degrees. Bam. Got him. All right. So let's move on to the next. All right, so this is example number 2. Go ahead and draw another parallelogram. All right, so this is parallelogram PQRS, and the intersection of the diagonals is L. So in parallelogram PQRS, PR, this diagonal is 32, and I would like to know PL. All right, so you can pause the video if you need to. All right, so you need a little bit of information for this because maybe you're thinking, hey, we didn't talk about this. All right, so awesome sauce. You can put this on the flap and then you need to put it in your notes. Diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. Diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other, which means QS just cut this guy in half. So if the whole thing is 32, then PL is half of that, it would be 16. So if the whole thing is 32 and this bisects it, which means cuts it in 2 equal pieces, so QS is a bisector, then this is 16 and that's 16. All right, last thing. So let me just make a little note here. This was theorem 8.5. So we had 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, and then 8.5. Diagonals bisect each other. So put this on the green flap and then also in your notes. And then also diagonals of a parallelogram separate the parallelogram into 2 congruent triangles. All right. So 2 congruent triangles means they're exactly the same triangle, right? They have angles that match, that are equal to each other, sides that are congruent to each other, corresponding sides and angles. Remember, corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And so we have that going on as well. All right, let's draw a parallelogram here. All right. So this is a parallelogram. This is ABCD. And I am going to draw this diagonal here. Now I'm going to go ahead and mark things so you can kind of see why this works the way it does. So in this parallelogram, AD is congruent to BC, AB is congruent to DC, and then AC is congruent to itself. All right, so hopefully you see the two triangles. So let's say that I start with this bottom triangle and I say triangle ACD is congruent to triangle, man, this is going to sound like stuff that we did a few chapters ago. So ACD is congruent to triangle What? Well, we need to make sure that we go from, so on this one we went from the side that's not marked to the side that's marked twice. We need to make sure we do that here. So side that's not marked, side that's marked once. No, that's the wrong way. Side that's marked, not marked at all, to the side that's marked twice. That's the correct way to go. We can also look at angles if we want to. You know, alternate interior, like parallel lines cut by a transversal. And so we can start looking alternate interior, all that good stuff if we want to. However, we don't really need to because we've got the sides figured out already. So be careful if they ask you to name the triangles that are congruent. All right, so make sure that you mark those sides and you're naming it so that these match. So AC is congruent to CA, which we know it is. CD is congruent to AB, which yes, it is. So that's a good double check. Just kind of walk through there and make sure that your sides match up. All right. So when you get to class, we will work some more problems similar to what we've done here. So for class time, I need you to put a star on the top page where you wrote down 8-2, the top right corner, put a star and the time that you watched this video, the day and the time that you watched this video. All right, so star, day and time that you've watched the video, and then show that to me. All right, guys, this is Coach Lowe, and I'm out.